Hot off the heels of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, we get yet another platformer with 2.5D metroidvania elements. As you may have seen through the trailers, when you compare the two and watch the two, you'd be forgiven if you thought these games were really similar. And it makes sense because they were both games released within months of each other and fit within the same genre. And in addition to that, one of the games was released by Ubisoft Montpellier, while the other was created by Surgeon Studios, which was helmed by Abu Bakr Salim, who played Bayek of Siwa in Assassin's Creed Origins, a previous Ubisoft title. So it would make sense if you drew some comparisons, at least on the surface. But as you play through it, you start to notice that the two diverge and start to distinguish themselves as to what they're trying to achieve. Now notice, I was very careful to mention that this game has Metroidvania elements, and is not actually a true Metroidvania in its entirety. This is worth mentioning because if you're planning on getting this game because it seems like just another Metroidvania, and you really like those kinds of games, this might not be what you're looking for. As video game development progresses, the lines sort of start to blur when we're discussing genres, and games over time have become a mishmash of genres. That's exactly how we push the medium forward. I mean, the genre itself, Metroidvania, is a portmanteau of Metroid and Castlevania. Now, I'm no expert into what really constitutes as a Metroidvania, but it's definitely got some elements that seem to be missing, and this is what I would describe as more of a Metroidvania lite. That's because, unlike most Metroidvanias, Tales of Kenzera ZAU is much more focused on telling its story. As I've mentioned, this was created by Abu Bakr Salim, who made this as a tribute to his late father, and meant to reflect and mirror his experiences with grief. That is the tale he wanted to tell, and he felt that there was no better way to tell the story than to create a video game, which was something that they bonded over during his childhood years. Of course, this was no easy feat for him, because this is actually not only the studio's debut title, but this is his first crack at making a game to begin with. He had no prior experience developing one, let alone managing a studio of his own. And so that in and of itself is just so impressive, and we absolutely must commend him for it. And it's clear that regardless of how well this game was received, it didn't really matter in the end, because this was a passion project, something that he felt was needed to be out there in the world, something that he felt could no longer be bottled up, and with all the work that's put into it, you can really tell this is a labor of love. And I think that's what attracts so many people to the indie space, because indie games typically are made with tons of passion, even if it is ironically under the EA label. The game showcases Afrofuturism with ties to his Kenyan ancestry, much of what this world and its story is inspired by. It follows a boy named Zuberi who recently lost his father, and in order to deal with that grief, he picks up the unfinished tale that his father was writing. It was about another boy also dealing with the passing of his own father, and that boy is our central protagonist, ZAU, the one who we follow through the duration of the game. ZAU is a shaman tasked to capture the spirits of 3 monsters as an offering to Kalunga, the god of death, who in turn promises to revive his father. The game reflects his journey through grief, which is especially amplified by the voice acting, the narration, the codex, and the art design of the game, a design that was actually more so inspired by the Ori games and becomes abundantly clearer the more you play. From the gameplay side of things, I would say it's pretty decent and has some interesting combat mechanics. Instead of sword wielding or guns blazing, you can swap between 2 masks. One harnesses the power of the moon to grant you ice abilities, the other harnesses the powers of the sun to grant you fire abilities. You will need to seamlessly swap between them both to effectively take down your enemies and traverse through the map. What I mean by this is perhaps there is a waterfall that you need to freeze in order to bounce between walls, or a spear you need to throw into an electrical switch, or a platform you need to build to elevate yourself higher only to destroy the next one to dash right through it. It feels really good when you can confidently switch between the two on the fly, as you feel yourself almost gliding through the levels. But unfortunately, that feeling doesn't really last very long and could use a bit more fluidity. Part of this might be also the controller layout, but thankfully they are remappable if you've grown accustomed to another moveset. The combat itself is fine, and at times can be fun, but other times, it could use some work. And even after unlocking the entire skill tree, I didn't really feel much more powerful or feel much of an advantage than I was at the start, save for some of the scripted major abilities you're granted as you progress through the story. From a Metroidvania standpoint, it is lacking, and you might be looking for something more. In its 20 hours, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown offers more battles, more enemy types, more puzzles, and a greater arsenal of abilities. But in contrast, Tales of Kenzera is only an 8-hour game with about 3 or 4 bosses and a few major areas to explore. As I said, some may find that to be lackluster, but the main purpose of this game isn't so much the gameplay itself, but rather the narrative it's trying to tell. And like most things, it should always be about quality versus quantity. And that's not to diminish Prince of Persia, mind you. I think Prince of Persia did a great job with its length and what it was trying to achieve. It's just that both of these games are trying to achieve different things, and I think that's important to know. Don't get me wrong though, I really did like this game, but I'm not gonna try to glaze it just for the sake of doing so. There were some issues that I felt that could have been ironed out, but overall didn't really hinder my experience and enjoyment. That being said, I did find that some of the backtracking was a little tedious. Of course, it could have been worse considering that the map isn't too big, but the traversal was a bit annoying to get through. And it does have fast travel points, but you can only really use them while you're at another fast travel point. And it could have really used it, especially in the central area where you start the game. When looking at the difficulty, this is definitely significantly harder than Prince of Persia when you're looking at the lower difficulty levels and its settings. The Lost Crown is, as described in my review, a nice starting point for those of you who are new to the genre. It lowers the barrier of entry. Mostly because when it comes to the difficulty settings themselves, there are several different settings. One of which is a custom setting that allows you to not only lower the difficulty for the combat, but the traversal too. And that's kind of what made Tales of Kenzera more difficult than it was. Aside from the combat not feeling as refined, it didn't feel too difficult. But it was really the traversal that made it frustrating at times, like when you're attempting the challenges that you find when you're off the beaten path, or especially in that very last area. It was super frustrating because if you do not master the traversal in that particular area, it sends you right back to the beginning. At first, I had chalked it up to me purely being bad at video games. I have mentioned in the past that I simply suck at them. And even though I got through it, I thought it was simply just a me problem. However, when stumbling across some other people's opinions online, like some of the Steam reviews, there are people that actually shared some of these sentiments, even ones that are seemingly more experienced with more difficult games than I am. Though, I don't think my reaction is nearly as negative as some of theirs, and I don't think is quite as positive as some of the other critics. Speaking of other opinions, from what I've heard about Prince of Persia, the story didn't really seem to be very well received by a lot of people. Many of them just didn't seem to like how it was told, but I actually seem to think it was pretty decent. But one thing that I think that really bolstered how ZAU's story was told was an element I believe that really elevates the character development in any game, and that is the use of a companion character. And while there are fewer characters in Tales of Kenzera, the use of that companion character means that it also allows you to connect with him on a deeper level, because companions are there with you through the duration of the journey. That's what makes Joel and Ellie's relationship so powerful. That's what makes Booker and Elizabeth's relationship so powerful, or all of your crewmates aboard the Normandy. And so Kalunga doesn't just appear at certain points or various moments, but he's really there with you throughout the journey. And I won't go into spoilers or anything, but it really does have that added payoff at the end because of this. But overall, I thought that they did a pretty good job, even if they did struggle towards the end. But for a debut title, this is really strong. They did a pretty great job. They set out to make something fun with ambition, and they achieved it. Also, if you are someone that is a bit more critical of these things, bear in mind that this game is only around 30 Canadian or 20 USD. It is significantly cheaper than Prince of Persia, which is a full price game. Of course, that does have more hours of content. We're looking at price differences as well. That is something else that is crucial to consider. Of course, I'd recommend playing both, but if you could only choose one, it really depends on what your priorities are and where they lie in. So all in all, I really think that they've got some good ideas here. It does carry some bits and pieces that could use some ironing out, like the movement and traversal and even some of the hitboxes, but the foundation that lies here and all the little distinctive design choices they have are all solid. The voice acting and the tale that they're telling is the aspect that shines here, and it's the cultural settings and the themes that they have that helps it form an identity of its own. Surgeon Studios did a pretty great job here, and should be nothing but proud of their accomplishments.